ברוכים הבאים. אל תדאגו, אנחנו נעבור לאנגלית עוד שנייה וחצי, אבל אנחנו אוהבים להתחיל בעברית, אני לא יודע למה, כשאנחנו בירושלים. לפחות בצד הזה של ירושלים. ברוכים הבאים לתמול שלשום וברוכה הבאה, Yiscah Smith. Welcome to Tmol Shilshom, and we're honored to have you, Yiscah. And I want to invite my dear friend Chagai Monsnir from the... זה אני לא יכול להגיד באנגלית.
Jerusalem Intercultural Center, but I will say this.
Okay, Chagai will...
No, we need to introduce ourselves. There's no other way to do it. I will do it fast because I think I'm not I want to give you a bit about the context, which is I think is as important, it's very important by itself. You know Jerusalem Day.
Yes.
I don't need to say no more. We decided that this year we reclaim Jerusalem Day, and it belongs to us, and it belongs to tolerance in this city. And we actually, at the Jerusalem Intercultural Center and other few partners, we decided to do something that we called Another Day in Jerusalem. Yom Acher Yerushalayim. In Hebrew, it sounds also the day of the other in Jerusalem. And eventually, we just asked people to say they want to do something, and we got 50 events. 50 events from yesterday, today. You can see they're here almost at the end of the day. You have nothing to do with it, but you can take it as a souvenir. But if you go on the internet site, you'll see that there are more, because after we took it out on Wednesday, another 5 got in. So it was really, so we are fascinated in the last 24 hours. I'm just running from one event to another, as I'm going to do now, because I need to go to the next one. I'm living like a politician, which is stupid. But I'm so happy to have Yiscah with us. And it will be a great evening, and we need to sit down so you can tell me what you just told them. Okay? Thank you, Yiscah, and you can just spread it around. Bye bye. Thank you.
We will wait 5 minutes till people that we know are stuck in Pukakim. Help me. In bubbles.
We need time in the
we'll get here. And I just want to say one thing about Tmol Shilshom and our connection to what is going on in this context. And even more important, one big announcement is that we have one t-shirt left, and the first person that will say they're willing to wear it this evening, get them. אתה צריך ללבוש אותה.
אוקיי.
עכשיו. לא סיפור על העניין הזה. הטבחים הערבים במטבח לא רצו את החמצה.
מתאים.
וגם המייצרים המקומיים של תמול שלשום יפה. שמקפידים על אופנה. Okay, so we've been here for 22 years. Tmol Shilshom. We've been doing so many different events, and we've been hosting so many different speakers and authors and musicians. And without naming it so, without making a statement, I think that this Yom Yerushalayim Acher or Yerushalayim Acheret is what we've been doing here, and what we want to continue and do here. And it doesn't go without saying, and as we all know, this is a city that has so many different tensions and conflicts. And sometimes particularly when I try to explain what we are asked to here abroad, I've just been to India, I think I've shared this with you, and I had all these conversations, like those of you who've been to India recognize that situation of sitting someplace in the other side of the world and just connecting to people from different places and trying to convey what we are about here. And it's very hard to explain to people who are lucky and don't know too much about war and don't know too much about intercultural or interreligious conflicts, even though we also know that the world is not as maybe except some places in Switzerland, and that too is being challenged, I guess, here and there. So there is conflict everywhere, I think, and so we here maybe have the strange privilege of being able to explain from our experience how we try to bridge over such conflicts is one thing, and live in the conflict is another thing. So let's enjoy our food and drink for 5 minutes before we actually start the discussion. Welcome, Yiscah.
Thank you. This is such an honor. David, thank you. Thank you so much. I feel so humbled. I hope you can appreciate as I tell some of my story through the lens of Yerushalayim, what a real, I'm not just saying this is an honor to be here. In my wildest dreams, and I have a lot of dreams, my wildest imagination, I have a big imagination, I never thought that someday I'd be able to receive an invitation to help program a Yerushalayim Acher, a different way of really celebrating what's really happening now. It means a lot, and it means a lot to do it here in Tmol Shilshom. Okay, this is an experiment. I've never given a talk like this, and I think you'll see why in a few minutes. I titled it, I have trouble coming up with a title. That's always the hardest part. So I have a few titles. Right? I don't have to have just one title. Celebrating liberation and freedom to the inner self from an occupying force within. Unification within oneself. Bringing harmony to a fragmented self. What I want to tell is all of that. So I couldn't just choose one of the three titles. I do want to mention, after I'm through telling a bit about my own story, I'm going to open it up to all of you. If any of you would like to share little snippets of your bringing harmony to a fragmented self, and you're celebrating your own personal liberation and freedom of who you are authentically. If you have any questions about my journey, I really invite all of you. This is not only a safe space, but let's consider it to be a brave space where we can really be connecting with each other, which is what Yom Yerushalayim spiritually is really about. I'm going to tell you a story. My own story, but through a different lens than I usually do. I'm going to share with all of you my story through the lens of Yom Yerushalayim and what it means to me, spiritually and individually. It most indeed is a story of liberation from an occupying force. A story of bringing harmony to a fragmented self. By all means, a personal unification, or perhaps even reunification. My story is a love story, with all the intrigue, drama, moments of laughter and celebration, and other moments of sadness and despair that define any love story. A love story that keeps growing from the moment the two lovers met. Multi-textured, characterized by commitment, a dream, and undying hope. A love story that keeps unfolding. In the summer of 1971, I was just about to turn 20. It was the summer between my sophomore and junior year in college. I'm on a plane to Frankfurt, Germany, a charter flight through my university, George Washington University in DC. And I'm running. I don't know if I'm running from myself or to myself, but I do know that I was running. I was living for the past almost 20 years, and as far back as I was 5, I became aware of it. So for the past, on a conscious way, 15 years, with the torment mamash the torment of gender identity dysphoria. And when I was 5 and 10 and 15 and 20, in 1971, I didn't have language, in any language. B'Ivrit, b'Anglit, lo mishoneh. I didn't have language to define what I was feeling, other than I know I am female. But yet somehow I'm in someone else's body. I felt like I was imprisoned. I felt like there was an occupying force keeping me from becoming liberated, to be who I was meant to be. So yes, I was running that summer. I remember on the plane from the States to Frankfurt, thinking, what am I going to do when I get off the plane with my backpack? I've never done anything like this before. I'm alone. I was always afraid to be alone. And I thought, well, I love the beach. I was raised on the ocean. And I just love the water. So I'll go to Italy, I'll go to Portugal, I'll go to Greece, I'll go to all, in my mind I just painted like, this scenario of beach to beach to beach to beach. And I had collected all this information to sort through on the plane ride. And then and now, many, many years later, 45 years later, I can tell you it was as if it happened a second ago. I felt this sudden awareness from within. I felt this urge to take the bag of all the literature that I had. I walked to the back of the plane where the garbage was, the garbage disposal, and I threw it out. And I said, oh, I know where I'm going. I have to go to Israel. Like, mapito. Where did that come? That was not on the option list. But then I realized, of course I want to go to Israel, because I studied about the kibbutz system in college, in sociology. And thank God I can say, Baruch Hashem, with all the kavanah I can, that the kibbutzim are in Israel. If they were in India, if they were in Japan, if they were in Siberia, that's where I would have gone. I wanted to be in a place where I could, for one moment, for a week, for a month, that's real luxury, not think about myself. Because I was tortured by my own inner turmoil. And it's like if any one of you have ever experienced a headache or a toothache, or you stub your toe, you can't, that's all you feel. Your whole body becomes a toe. Your whole body becomes a tooth, because it's in pain. Well, my whole psyche, daily, there was a daily chronic anxiety tearing me apart. And I learned that what's essential on a kibbutz is the we much more than the me. So this to me was a getaway or a going to. Again, I don't know. It didn't matter. I was just running. So while I'm in Israel, by the way, I never got to work on a kibbutz. Because that summer, for an assortment of reasons, a lot of backpackers from all over the States, North America, and Europe also felt they had to work on a kibbutz. And I remember going to Tel Aviv to the kibbutz desk, the placement desk. I don't know what there is now. And the first question the woman said is, where is your letter? I said, letter? What letter? I'm a backpacker. Freedom. I'm a flower child. Letter from whom? My mother's a fanalekha? She said, you have had to make a reservation. I said, wait a minute, a reservation to clean toilets for free? I should make a reservation. That didn't make sense. She said, hello, you know how many we have for the first time? More mitnatvim, we have more people who want to volunteer than places. I said, I'll go to a lot, and I will clean toilets. She said, tell me something I don't know. There's no room. Okay, so I cried and said, okay, what am I here for? Why am I in Israel if not to work on a kibbutz? Well, I'm here already, so I did what every other tourist does. I go to Yerushalayim. Yerushalayim. How could I not go visit Yerushalayim? I'm here. First time I'm in Yerushalayim, I fall in love with Yerushalayim. While still in the Tachana HaMerkazit, in the central bus station, and I mean the old one in 1971, I knew I was home. I felt it in the very fiber of my existence. How did I know it? Because I never felt at home. So there was this new feeling, the smells, the noises, the pulse, a creative force drenching the city with cries of what may be, rather than remaining stagnant with what is. And that spoke to me, because I didn't like who I am in the present. I wanted what may be. And I fell in love with that. Such idealism, such optimism, such a sense of the miraculous, and as Heschel says, the wonder and the radical amazement of the present. Feeling my soul, my Jewish identity, surfacing, feeling home and at home. This was all new for me. Feeling excited to be Jewish for the very first time in my life. Not that I was ashamed. I came from a Jewish home. We were traditional in a sense, not observant though of Shabbat and Kashrut and all the Chagim, but my parents didn't raise me being anti. They were just not for. That was for the ultra-Orthodox in Brooklyn. I come from New York on Long Island, so if you were Jewish and you wanted to really be religious, you lived in Brooklyn. That's what my parents told me. And we lived on Long Island, so we didn't have to be religious. It made a lot of sense to me. But there was no anti. So here I am with all these new feelings. I was like open for it all. Feeling my soul, like I said, my Jewish identity for the first time in my life. Going up to Har HaBayit. I went up to Har HaBayit that summer. I've never been back since, by the way. But going up then in 1971, I felt such serenity, such quietude. It was so different than it is now. It was so, it just drew me. I didn't know from Holy of Holies, I didn't know from the first temple, the second temple, I just knew I went to Temple Bethel in Long Island. And someone said, you know, the wall is a remnant from the temple. I said, the temple, isn't that a little bit presumptuous, the temple? And they said, well, it's not presumptuous, it's factual. I said, no. That was the lack of my knowledge, but I knew I was on a piece of land that was special, and it evoked something inside of me. And it continues to evoke something inside of me. The love affair begins with all the passion, infatuation, hopes and dreams that define a newfound love. Relieved that summer that I actually did not have to be religious. Like, wow, I didn't have to be Orthodox. I could just be Jewish. So it gave birth, it also birthed my Zionism. I could be in a place where I could be free to experiment and explore and discover my Jewish identity. I didn't have to be in a box. But as I left Israel that summer to go back to continue my education at GW, I was torn up inside by my own gender identity dysphoria. And this new love affair, in a cruel way, exacerbated. Is that the right pronunciation? Exacerbated. My inner turmoil. Where do I go? How to enter? Through which gate? Which way? I felt so much joy and at the same time so fragmented. All at the same time. Clarity and confusion together. Such a paradox. Summer/fall, 1973. Just 2 years later. After graduating college, I'm now working at Kibbutz Sdot Yam. Wow, I loved it. I loved it. Sdot Yam, the fields of the sea. Literally right on the beach. I grew up on the beach. This was my dream come true. I finally get to work on a kibbutz. A fantasy dream becoming my reality. On the beach mamash. Every day I remember everything stopped at sunset. And we all watched the sun dip into the Mediterranean. And then came Rosh Hashanah. And a very odd, very peculiar event happened. A bunch of us Anglo volunteers asked the head, who was a kibbutz member, who was the representative of the kibbutz to the volunteers, we asked him, where is the synagogue? Because you go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. I was not religious then, I was not observant, but you still go to synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. And I knew this. I knew the kibbutz did not have one, but I thought they would put one out. We all thought, of course, you go to shul, you go to synagogue or Rosh Hashanah. So he said, well, we don't have a Beit HaKnesset. How can you not have a Beit HaKnesset? It's Rosh Hashanah. He said, if you want, you can go. There's a Beit HaKnesset about 5 kilometers from here. I said, okay, can someone give us a ride? Because I was not shomer to mitzvot in terms of not driving. So he said, no, we can't drive you to a synagogue on Rosh Hashanah. It's prohibited. I said, wait a minute. I don't get this. So he said, look, if you want to go on a tiyul, Rosh Hashanah, we're not working, we'll take you up to we'll go on a hike into the Galil, we'll go into the Arava, into the desert, but we're not going to drive you to Rosh Hashanah. It would be an embarrassment to the kibbutz. It totally went right over us. So what are we going to do? It was Yom Kippur 10 days later. We decided, a group of us, we're going to Yerushalayim. My love, Yerushalayim. It was Yom Kippur 1973. I'm at the Kotel. I'm at the wall, not knowing at all what's going on with the Machzor or the Siddur. I didn't even know what it was called. But there I am at the Kotel on Yom Kippur, and all of a sudden, sirens go off. And I remember thinking, if there was ever a war, it probably would be like this. But it's Yom Kippur, so maybe this is just our test, And all of a sudden, and I kid you not, there was such fright. All of a sudden, everybody started running. And the Shamrim, the police, the Mishra was saying, Achutza, Achutza, Shayafo, Miyad, Miyad. They were saying to everybody, go, just leave. And not through Sha'ar HaShvot, not through the Dung Gate, but we had to go through the Shuk, through the Jaffa Gate. Everyone's running, people are crying, people are just totally freaked out. What do I know? I'm from Long Island. I was a child of I demonstrated against the Vietnam War when I was in college. I didn't know what a war was like. But all I knew is I better run with everybody else because everyone was running as fast as possible. Confused, not knowing, not understanding. And an image occurred. Something occurred that left an image in my mind. I only wish I could blot it out. As we were running down Rechot David, that main street in the Shuk, I'm not exaggerating, and it hurts me to say this, but it made such an impression. I won't say all, because I don't know, but many of the Arab shopkeepers were standing by the front door like this, with a smirk. Now remember, this was 4 years after the 6-Day War. And that frightened me so much. Because I'm a baby boomer, flower child. I love everybody. And I saw something in their eyes that really, it was petrifying. And I wish I could forget it. I want to forget it. And part of why I'm here tonight is maybe to help forget it. But what I saw was hatred. So we ran faster. And welcome to Israel during a war with the blackout. You couldn't drive at night with your headlights, you had to paint them blue. It took us 3 hours to get back to Sodot Yam because all the Egged buses were mobilized for the soldiers. So we got a tramp here, we got a tramp there, we hitched here, we hitched there. Till we got back to the kibbutz, I felt like I was literally home sweet home. And we were told we had to put blankets in the window. We could not, the whole country was blackout at night. And then the head of the volunteers, the one who a week ago, 10 days before, said that there's no synagogue, said to us, okay, the vacation is over. Now we really need you here. Because just about everybody under 40 was nowhere to be seen. They were all mobilized. So here we had this group of North American and Europeans, young people, and we had to go out to the cotton fields. At that time, cotton was one of the bigger commodities on the kibbutz, and they were afraid once the first rains came, if the cotton wasn't picked, they would have a terrible financial loss. So we left the house, we left our little kibbutz houses in the dark, and we came home in the dark. 12-hour days. We were exhausted, we were filthy, we were sweating. And I fell in love with my lover even more. That made me a committed Zionist. I was ready right then and there to give up my life for Israel. Right then and there. And I remember we each had like our one phone call, so to speak, because it was not like today with smartphones. So you can imagine our parents and worrying. So we took turns trying to get through to the States. And I remember my parents saying, when are you going to come home? Just like, we are petrified. I said, first of all, the airport is closed. There are no flights. This is a war. This is not a campaign into Gaza or into Lebanon. This is a war. I said, and I remember these words, Mom and Dad, I am home. I am home. I'm not coming back till this war is over. And I didn't know how long it would take. Well, I never felt more at home until that moment. Within me, I totally forgot my gender identity dysphoria. I was surrounded by so much suffering, so much death. The first 3 days, so much anxiety because we were losing. The first 3 days, we were losing the war. And yet, for me, what it did, I never felt more alive. I never felt more alive and more committed to my love, to my lover. Eventually, the war ended, thank God. I went back and I applied for grad school in the summer of 1974. Just about 8 months later, I'm back in Yerushalayim. I can't stay away from here. Because before I started my master's program at the Jewish Theological Seminary, JTS in New York, I was here for the summer. They had at that time a preparatory program for people who didn't have a background in text. So now, the first summer, I'm here to discover my Zionism and Jewish identity. The second time, my commitment to really make this a lifetime relationship and eventually live here. The third visit, for the first time, I get to study Jewish texts. Basic Chumash with Rashi, just very basics. I took to it like a moth to a flame. My gosh, it totally grasped me. I became engulfed and absorbed by the light of the Torah, by the flame of the Torah. I began to observe Shabbat and Kashrut. I wanted to sense, I wanted to feel the Almighty, Hashem, God, in my private Holy of Holies, within me and in the world outside of me. I felt so divided that I did not sense God within me or without. A part of me felt very alive and passionate, but another part of me was self-hating, loathsome, and despairing, because I thought I was doing everything I should. And yet, I kept feeling divided. I kept feeling I'm living in someone else's, under someone else's authority, so to speak. An occupying force. But I knew I was home. And if you ask me, but isn't that a contradiction? Yes. And there's one of my rebbes that I just so love learning from, the Ish Kodesh, the Yiscah Smith Rebbe says. That is real living. Living in the paradox, to be able to hold paradox. Well, my life was really paradox. I'm a self-declared Zionist, ready to move here after finishing grad school in Jewish education, and I did. Summer of 1977, with my proud wife, 1-year-old son, and a master's degree in hand, we made Aliyah as a Chabad Haredi imposter to Tzfat, because we couldn't afford to live in Yerushalayim. I knew my lover was here, but she knew that for the time being we needed to have this relationship with Tzfat, which is not such a bad second. Tzfat was, by the way, very different in 1977 than now. Oh my gosh! So different. Yes. There I am making deal after deal with God. I'll be more machmir, ra. I'll be more strict. I'll do this, I'll do that. Just please wave your magic wand so I can wake up tomorrow morning, my body could be that of a woman, or actually my soul could be that of a man. I really didn't care. I wanted this occupying force out. I wanted liberation. I wanted freedom. So I kept thinking, I'm not doing enough. And then Hashem, God, the Almighty, played a very interesting, I won't say cruel, it was actually kind gesture of irony. Because I graduated from JTS, the Misrad HaChinuch here After just a 2 or 3 week orientation, I received my license to teach. I have a Yerushalayim Hara'ah here. And the Beit Chabad School for Girls, the Beit Chana in Sfat, was part of the Reshet Mamachti Dati. So they needed one teacher who had the Rishayon Hara'ah. Yours truly had it. So there I got this job. I walked right into a beautiful position teaching these girls. It was an all-girls school with all women teachers, and they thought I was the only male. I knew better. There were no men there. This was heaven for me. This was heaven. And then it didn't last too long, because what happened was, I call this the funny divine irony, but what happened after that, my second child was born in Sfat in March of 1978. Now, for those who were here then, you may remember it was the Mivtza Litani in southern Lebanon. Right? So the hospital that she was born in Sfat, became the triage trauma center for all the IDF who were fighting in southern Lebanon, because that hospital was the closest hospital to Lebanon. So there, my daughter was born in the middle of rockets at night. We're hearing all night, and the buildings are shaking. And my daughter is born. It was just, once again, Hashem, I'm here to stay. I'm not leaving. I'm building a family here. This is a lifetime, for better or for worse, till death do us part. I'm in this relationship for life. But about 11 months later, we realized that my daughter was born deaf, and we needed to return back to the States to take care of her special needs. There was nothing in Sfat at that time. No sign language in any language. No therapy for parents of deaf children, and we couldn't afford yet to live in Yerushalayim. So we went back to the States, and I really felt this was God's way of saying, not only haven't you done enough, but I'm going to punish you. That was my truth. And it's enough that you're punishing me that I have to leave Eretz Yisrael, Medinat Yisrael, Tzfat, Yerushalayim. Like, my gosh, I can't imagine living back in America. Because I felt so stifled, and I didn't feel alive there. But my daughter, when I thought of that verse about the children, the iniquity of the parents visiting the children, it was terrible. It really was so confusing. But I kept with it. I kept with it because I loved my Judaism. And I kept thinking, if I just try and try. Well, winter of 1985, about 6 years later, nothing could keep me back from Yerushalayim. I went alone on a family pilot trip, representing my family to Yerushalayim. By then, we were able to afford. See, with every dark, my father always says, you should live and be well. With every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. What was the silver lining in the dark cloud of living in New York for 6 years? I was able to save up enough money to move my family to Yerushalayim. So I came alone in the winter to make plans for that. It was great. I got off the plane at Ben Gurion. Oh, I could breathe again. I'm back with my lover. We're back together in that moment of intimacy. Summer of 1985, a few months later, we made Aliyah again with the family to the old city, right here in Yerushalayim, to the Rova. There I am, the director of the Chabad house of the old city for Anglo residents, for all the Dovrei Anglit, for the residents, for students, for tourists. There I am as a Haredi-looking rabbi. I wasn't a rabbi, I didn't receive simcha, but everyone insisted on calling me rabbi. So I gave up trying to say I'm not, because they insisted I was. Black hat, beard, not like this. I did believe that what I was doing deep inside was good, but I was not doing it the right way, because it was not in an authentic way. But I didn't know any other way to do it. Again, this is 1985, still yet before online, for the personal computers and smartphones and support groups, and I still didn't even know the word transgender. I did not know that word. I just knew something's wrong with this picture. When I look in the mirror and I see this Hasidic male guy looking back at me instead of a beautiful woman. to be a woman. Beautiful. So I said, you know what? I'll make more deals. I'll try harder. I will leave all my problems back in New York. I'll be a good Jewish man, a good Jewish husband, a good Jewish father, knowing that it was futile. Who was I kidding? Friday night after Friday night, going to the kotel, saying in the Amidah, "V'taheli beinam atocha be'emet," and I'm saying it mamash shakarlit. You know, God, please purify our hearts to be with you in truth. I'm saying those words every single Friday night, and I'm lying. Living a secret, never feeling relaxed, never letting go, survival, fighting, convincing, manipulating, all this terrible way of being with people. But I love to teach, I love to share Torah, because then I could not think of myself. And I love the text, really diving into it. I felt the different quarters within me. You know, in the old city, there's the Ravad this and the Ravad that, right? Ravad Yehudi, Ravad Muslimi, Ravad Nazrit, and the Armenians. The different quarters within me were viciously at war with each other. The Jew, the Zionist, the Chabad Hasid, the husband, the father, the son, the acting rabbi, the human, the transgender, the rover resident, the planet Earth inhabitor. No one got along with each other. They were all at odds with each other, viciously. All that was genuine was my love for my children and for my Israel and for my Yerushalayim, my lover. And my impassioned yearning to be close to Hashem, even though I didn't feel close. It all evaded me. By 1991, and again, for those who were here, you may remember the Gulf War crisis. Another crisis. I've been part of a lot of crises here. And I have to say, each one makes me stronger. By 1991, alongside the Gulf War crisis, after the first Intifada, my life collapsed. I couldn't go on anymore as an imposter like this. I recall going to the lawyer's office preparing for my divorce with my gas mask, because at any second they give me a hazakah and we'd have to go into the safe room. A siren, we'd have to go into these safe rooms. Which was the opposite, by the way, derech hagav, by the way. The army had this whole debate how to advise people to prepare for this war, because usually you would go into a miklat, which is below ground. But at that time, the army was concerned that there would be chemical warheads. We knew we were going to be torpedoed. That was a promise. One thing you can trust Iraq. When they made a promise, they fulfilled it. We just didn't know if there would be chemical warheads or not. And the worst place to be if it was a chemical warhead would be underground, because the gas was heavier than oxygen. So they made a decision to go as high up as possible and seal the windows and have food and water, and they were called safe rooms. So we all made safe rooms and got gas masks. There I am going through a divorce, but having to wait online with the mother of my children, with the 6 kids, without Tudat Zarut, to get gas masks. I mean, could you imagine what I was feeling like inside? And yet, I wouldn't have traded where I was to be any place in the world. I just wanted to be at home inside of me, but not to leave Israel. Chas v'shalom. God forbid. Well, eventually, we did get divorced. Actually, the day of the get was the day that the government decided we no longer had to carry our gas masks because the war was over. And I said, yes, the war, at least one war, was over. So I moved to Tel Aviv. I left the Torah way of living. I thought there was no place for me in Torah Judaism. I moved to Tel Aviv. And that didn't last too long. I felt very lonely there. I couldn't teach Torah there. I felt something's really missing. So, with my head down, I moved back to New York. Alone, divorced, defeated. This was in March of 1992. I felt there was even though I am home, there's no place for me to be at home. I didn't think I was going home when I went back to New York. I just knew I could get a job back in New York. And my Hebrew wasn't fluent enough then to get a job in Tel Aviv, where I could afford child support. I did get a job, but it was very, very little. It was the saddest day in my life on the way to the airport. My dream to settle, to really be here as a committed Zionist, as a committed lover to this relationship, it evaporated on the ride to the airport. As well, I did leave the Torah observant life. I sensed for sure there was no place for me. Where did God go? Where was he, she, it? Was she ever really, or he in my life, ever really? Or was this just like a figment of my imagination? I really didn't know that. So that was in March of 92, Sukkot of 1992, 6 months later. Nothing could keep me back from my lover. I'm back here again because it's one of my sons celebrating his becoming a bar mitzvah. And I had to be here. Of course I had to be here. But it was eerie, it was strange being back at the Kotel the way I was, with all the memories from before. There was a lot of tension within my nuclear family and within me. I felt under attack as a non-observant, confused, blundering person. In the midst of where I lived, where I used to live, where I used to work, where I hosted Shabbat guests every Friday night for the perfect Shabbat, where I helped raise my 6 children. There I was back in such a different way. It was really eerie. But deep inside, I did not give up on my lover. I didn't give up on this relationship. Never. However, I wasn't yet ready to do what I needed to do in order to be faithful to my lover. Not yet. February of 1993, March of 1994, February of 1995, and December of 2001. And how do I know those dates? This morning when I prepared this talk, I checked all my old passports to see how many times I kept going back and forth to my lover. And it was one reason after the next. Wanting to see the kids, I had got a job in Manhattan, in New York, working for a travel tour company who organized tours to Israel. So because I had lived here, I was in charge of the customized tour department. So I kept making excuses. I need to go and I need to check that. And they'd sent me. So back and forth, all these short visits. Reuniting with my lover for the night. That's what it was like. I longed, I ached, I yearned to be reunited with my lover. But the occupying forces within me were climaxing such a horrific battle, it prevented me from entry, from really settling. May of 2004, I'm back again. This time, as I'm reuniting with my lover, it was time to say goodbye to what was, as I was in the middle of my gender transition. Actually, I was at a point where it was beginning to look a lot different than my Israeli passport. And I had a lot of trouble leaving. I didn't have trouble coming into the country, I had a lot of trouble leaving the country. Yeah, that was, and then I knew I could not come back until everything was complete and all my documents were in order. I made a recommitment to my lover when I was at the Kotel, and I said goodbye forever to being on the men's side of the Mechitza. I said, I will never, I hope, I will never be back here again. And I glanced over at the women's side, and I said, wait for me, I'm coming back. I'll be here. My spiritual compass was due Yerushalayim. Actually, from America due east, Yerushalayim. Summer of 2011. The first time I'm back home in Yerushalayim as a free. This was my post-6-day war. My Mechemet Shishat HaYamim. I came back to Yerushalayim when I walked off the airplane at Ben Gurion. You know when you reach the door with the first mezuzah, and that big mezuzah, not the big one. That was right before passport. I mean, just after the jetway, and I touched it. I felt I was liberated. I mamash felt I was liberated. Post-transition, whole and healed inside, the occupying forces within me vanquished. The longest period, this is the longest period of time since 1971 that I was separated from my lover. 7 years. From 1971 till now, till 2011, I never went 7 years without being in Israel. In person, I was separated. But not a day passed in those 7 years that I ever forgot my lover. And now, what we call Shalom Bayit, inner Shalom Bayit, harmonia in Hebrew, harmony, marital bliss. Each quarter within me now holding the others with grace, with dignity. Each quarter within me at peace with the other quarters. Allowing for the other to flourish, to blossom with encouragement. I belonged to all of them, and all of them belonged to me. No more raging wars, honoring the different pieces within me as each piece became an essential piece of my puzzle of authenticity. So now, I stand before you so humbled, so grateful to celebrate a different type of Yom Yerushalayim, within and without, in harmony, in as a real reunification as one can imagine. What I celebrate now with all of you is the sheer, unexplainable, mystical miracle of it all. The fact that I am actually standing here today with all of you, sharing my soul, my authentic self with you is a miracle. This is a miracle. You know, in Hanukkah, when we're chutz la'aretz, we say Nes Gadol Haya Sham. A big miracle was there. Here, on the Sivavon, on the dreidels, it says Nes Gadol Haya with a pei, po. What I say is Nes Gadol Mamshich Liot po. A great miracle continues to happen. My very life is a miracle. Punctuated now by compassion, closeness, humility, patience, and gratitude. This is Yom Yerushalayim. This is what happens when the real occupying forces are vanquished. This is how we can really live with ourselves and with each other. And one by one, I believe, I must believe, if I can be liberated, I like to think I bring hope to people. If I can be redeemed, if I can experience harmony with all the many inhabitants within me, the many diverse, honest expressions of who I am, then each one of you, each person living in Yerushalayim, wherever they're living in Yerushalayim, however they're living in Yerushalayim, also can. And then, mamash, then we can celebrate not only the outer dimension of Yerushalayim being reunited, but also the soul, the spirit, the essence of Yerushalayim. The word shalem is in Yerushalayim. Shlemut, being reunited in harmony, in completion. B'karov, soon, soon, soon. Mamash, Kini Hiratzon. Thank you. I'm just one among the many. Thank you for allowing me to share my Yom Yerushalayim with all of you. At this point, does someone have an insight or a question that they...
Without getting into like too much personal detail, because I feel like I know a decent amount of you, but like not too much. I feel like there are so many of us here, Dafka in Yerushalayim, with like these stories of huge inner conflict and turmoil, and I related so deeply to so much of what you had to say. I was like on the verge of tears through half the speech.
So was I.
But why do you think that Dafka here, so many of us come. I feel like throughout the rest of the country and throughout the rest of the world, there are people with like interesting stories and interesting conflicts and interesting like pieces of themselves that are sort of like at war with each other. But there is such an enormous concentration of us here, of people, social justice workers who are also Haredim, people with different gender conflicts, people with different identity, like so many different pieces that end up here trying to like, and this is the one space that they can actually fit all of the very different pieces of themselves into the same space. Why Dafka Jerusalem?
Can you hold the mic, then we'll hear you better? Not this one.
Did you hear me okay when I was standing?
Yeah.
Like this?
Is that okay?
Yeah, this is fine.
We can take it also further, and then you'll be free.
I'm gonna read it. I don't know. I have a sense. I mean, that's an amazing question. An amazing question. You know, Yerushalayim is referred to by many as Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, the holy of the sacred city. Now, every one of us here, you were to ask everyone in the room, what does that mean to you? You know, 2 Jews, 3 opinions. You will get a lot of different opinions. What I said earlier in my story, though, what I sensed, I didn't know the word or the phrase, the holy city. I sensed a creative energy here. The possibility of what may be. This is a city, believe it or not, with all the conflict. To quote Emily Dickinson, I dwell in the realm of possibility. It may not always be probability, but here we have tikva, here we have hope. Even though outwardly, it seems like it's the least of the places in the world. But deep inside, it's the very soul and the heart of Yerushalayim. Because this is the mothership. This is the mothership of what's being channeled from above to below, of a place where one can experience, however one understands the divine presence within. So we know that intuitively, even if we don't know it in a cerebral or on a conscious level. I'm sure that's what pulled me here. That had to be what pulled me here. That here I could do it. Yeah, that's Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh. Yes, David?
The part of the story which is missing for me, and I'm sure you elaborated on this in your book, but if you are willing to share a little bit here now, is about the time that you did hear the word transgender, that you did realize that you could pass that bridge. If I got right, Jerusalem, New York intervals must have happened in New York City, that you actually went through the process of making that your goal and target. How did you get there? How did you get there?
Great question. And shortly after I moved back to New York in March of '92, I was reading this article in a magazine. And I remember sitting, for those who know New York, do you know where Bryant Park is? By the public library?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was on my lunch hour, my lunch break, and I had purchased, each month I would purchase a magazine called The Advocate. What I did was I traded in one lie for another lie. I traded in the lie of a straight male for the lie of a gay male. Because I knew, and this was really confusing, but I felt I could experiment my feminine, female energies more in the gay world than I could in the straight world without being totally beat up and murdered. Even though I didn't feel I'm gay, I felt I was attracted to men, but more like my girlfriends were, like as a heterosexual woman. But I still didn't even know the word transgender. And every month I would buy The Advocate. and not know why I would buy it, because it was all about lesbian women and gay men. And then I read this article, there's a picture of this woman, and it says, at age 52, he becomes she. And I read this article, and I was glued. I was glued to every single word. This was about a person, born transgender, lived on the Upper East Side in New York, became very wealthy when he went to business school. He was the CEO of a big, big company, married, with 2 children, living the life of luxury. After his second of the 2 children, the youngest, finished university, he gave each of them a big check. And he said, I now have to tell, and he spoke to his wife and children, expecting them to do exactly what they did, which was to divorce him, she legally, the children emotionally. They never wanted to see him ever again. And he began his gender identity, his gender transition. And I said, oh my gosh, she just gave me the keys out of this cell. She just gave me the arsenal I needed to vanquish my occupier. And that got me ready. That got me ready for my transition. That day was beautiful. That was the beginning. It took a few years. It's a process. It's a tahalich, as we say in Hebrew.
When did you come out to your wife and your children?
Can you repeat the question?
You're asking when did I come out to my
To
prayer?
your family, yeah.
As what? There were 2 kinds.
As a transgender.
Oh, as a
When
trans-
did you reveal to them your desire to become
Okay, I
to
made the-
actually become a woman?
Yeah, I made the decision. Well, I never made a decision, and this is the educator speaking now. I can't help myself. I never
Sorry,
made.
I missed that.
This is the educator in me coming out.
Okay.
I never decided to become a woman. It's like asking you, when did you decide to become a woman? So what would you say to me? When did you decide to become a woman?
No, that's not fair. There's a difference. I was
No, there
born
isn't.
a
No.
woman.
Yeah, well, I was born a woman too. And that's what most people don't understand about being
But
born.
when did you decide?
No, but there.
That's different.
When did you decide to match?
Yes.
To match your body to
On my
what you
50th,
wear.
on my 50th birthday in 2001. 2001. 9 years after reading that article. And I proceeded to write to my parents an 8-page letter. Wrote it, tore it up, sent it to them. And I discussed this with each of my children.
What I get from your story, and that touches me very deeply, is the fact that no matter what your love affair with Israel and Jerusalem may have been and still is, it was something very authentic and very deeply felt, and that you could not realize it before you were authentic in this other way.
Yes.
And I think that has that applies to so much of our lives, to so many things, whether it's gender or something else. But this is what I find so very.
I couldn't be at home here, even though I knew I was home, because I wasn't home inside.
Inside, exactly.
Yes.
Good for you.
Thank God.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. One of the things I understood from what you said, and tell me if it's right.
Every time I've interviewed, someone puts words.
So I don't want to do that. Is that at some point there was a transition from feeling that God was disappointed in what you were doing to a sense of hopefulness.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what created that transition. Different transition.
Yeah, that was part of the transition. I mentioned in my TED Talk actually that my gender transition was at least as much a spiritual transition. Because on the day that I decided in 2001, when I woke up on my 50th birthday, that was 15 years ago, no more deals. You see, the reason I was angry with God, I was really angry with me. I wasn't really angry with God. I made what's called a unilateral peace agreement. don't work. You have to have both parties making the peace agreement. So I made this unilateral peace agreement on behalf of God with me. Of course it didn't work. On that day, I said, God, no more conditions. No, just please hold me. Just hold me, hug me. Help me be real. Help me be honest. And that began my gender transition. So actually my gender transition brought me back to Torah. Brought me back to Israel. Brought me back. Mamash ani chazer b'tshuva. I don't say ani chazar b'tshuva. I will not say I returned. I'm still returning. But it's real this time. It's visceral. It's imminent. It's very real for me now. Because there were no conditions to this relationship. Whatever it is, it is. So yeah, that was a very big part of my transition.
Yeah, I can't help while really respecting your change and difficulties with it. I can't help feeling the anguish of your children. And I just wonder if you must have felt this sense of growing disease in the marriage, why you went on to have 6 and maybe didn't stop at 1 or 2. Because you must have had a kind of intimation of this is not right, this is not working, this is
More than that.
Yeah.
However, I lived in the Haredi world, and to give you an example of why I had 6, I have to show you why I felt we needed to keep having children. I'll tell you what happened when we stopped having children. My youngest was 3. About 3. It was after his cutting the hair ceremony, so I knew he was about 3 years old.
How many did you have at that point?
6. This is my youngest. In 8 years, we had 6 children. Right? So it was very clear to the public, to the community in the Rova, in the Jewish quarter, that we stopped. Someone who I hardly knew came up to me in such as a matter of fact, like today, you would come up to someone and say, "Isn't it hot today in Yerushalayim? Is everything okay with your family?" Why are you asking me, is everything okay in my family? You hardly know my family. Well, you know, a couple of us are beginning to wonder, since, you know, your wife doesn't seem to be pregnant. I said, are you questioning one of the most personal parts of my family life? You're not really interested if everything's okay in my family. You want to check off the box that you would probably selected to be the shaliach to come forward and have the chutzpah and the disrespect to talk to me that way. It's none of your business. But I knew I was not shocked. So that's the type of pressure we felt. Especially, we were leaders in the community. People looked up to us.
But even with 6?
What do you mean, even what was?
I mean, wasn't 6 enough to stop you doing what?
Only 6.
Oh my gosh, it was overwhelming. 6 was overwhelming in 8 years. For me, at least the family I come from, you know, I came from a family with 2 sisters, and my children's mom had 1 sibling. For us, it was like a full-time job for both of us. I hardly had any time to teach. Someone I know in Nachlaot, they have 2 children, Leah and Marab, said to me, how did you ever do it? How did you travel, and how did you go away? How did you go to other people for Shabbat? I said, we didn't. We didn't. We were home the whole time. We were changing diapers and giving baths and homework assignments, and that was like a life till my divorce. Yeah.
Are they still Haredi?
Pardon me?
Are they still Haredi, your family?
None of them are Haredim, but 5 of the 6 still live in Israel.
I'll just take this.
In the back?
Yeah, following up a bit on what you were saying already in some answers, how is, if I may ask this, how is the relationship now with your former wife and former children? And how was it after the divorce? If this is not
That's all I can say. A lot of pain. There's a colleague of mine, Joy Layden. I don't know if there's somebody here, a few people may have heard of her. She teaches English literature at Stern College in New York City, which is under the auspices of Yeshiva University. She herself is not Orthodox, but Yeshiva University is. So a lot of Orthodox women go to Stern College. Many, many years ago, she taught English literature as J. Layden. And after she received tenure, she took a year off, sabbatical, and underwent her gender transition. Came back as Joy. She wrote her memoir, very different than my memoir. We have a different style of writing. I mean, she's an English lit major, and I'm a spiritual teacher of Hasidut. So it comes out in how we write memoirs. She wrote a line in her memoir that just, have you ever read a book and you read one line and you feel, that's why I read the book? So this is the one line that I share with you. She said that I felt my transition was the repairing of the shattering of a life. And as a result, I shattered the lives of those I love. So my tikkun, my healing, was not without consequences. I don't regret it for a second because it had to be done. But I'm sad that there's pain. So little by little, which, some of us at moments, anyway, when you have that many children, I mean, they're all married, they're raising their children here as Israelis. You know, for those who are parents in the room and those who come from families, all of us come from families, no 2 days are the same anyway. There's always something going on with someone in the family. So I just have at times a lot because of the particular situation. But it's always changing. So I do have hope. So I hope that answers the question.
I thought one of the images that was most powerful for me was of you being at the Kotel in the men's section and looking over the women's section and sort of thinking you're going to be there. But I was also thinking you're really, at that time, observant, Orthodox person on the side where you get to put on tefillin and you get to pray out loud and you get to sing there as loud as you want to. And you're thinking, okay, soon or when I get to where I want to be, then I won't be able to sing, I won't be able to put on tefillin. I don't know exactly where you are now religiously. It's not, but just there's an interest. It just sort of struck me that there's from many sides of Judaism, you're sort of not choosing. It's not the right word. You're going into a process that's sort of disenfranchising yourself.
I've been asked that question a lot, and part of the answer is to ask a question back because I am Jewish. So, did you ever see the movie Yentl?
Yeah.
So what Barbara Streisand, the role she played, was someone who so wanted to be on the men's side. I never wanted to be on the men's side because I never felt I was a man. I felt it was a long, there's these Broadway shows that go on and on like Cats. And when I was younger, in my naivety, I didn't realize the cast keep changing. So I kept thinking, how does someone go out night after night after night for like 10 years? Playing the same part in the same show. And then I looked at my own life and said, hello, that's what I've been doing. I couldn't do it anymore. I didn't feel privileged by any means, because it was someone else's role. Now, that being said, for being on both sides of the Mechitza, I can tell you there are challenges on the men's side, and there are challenges on the women's side. I'd rather face and embrace, not only face, embrace and invite the challenges on the women's side because I'm a woman, rather than face and never embrace the challenges that don't belong to me, that belong to someone else. And the men do have challenges, they very much do. They're just different, a different set of challenges.
Do you feel, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. Do you feel at times that you have something extra that heterosexual people do not have, having been in both sexes, even though you suffered a lot, a bit like the myth of Tiresias, of really Because I feel that a lot about religious people who've become secular and vice versa is that that this is a really different secular kind of woman or guy because he's been on both sides and knows something about opposites and living with paradoxes. And do you ever feel that?
I do, and I'll tell you what else I feel. That as every one of you in this room hopefully walks your road on your journey to authenticity, you will taste something that none of us taste. That's what it means to be authentic. As Rav Kook explains in the book of his letters, which he wrote shortly before he passed away, right here on the Rehov Rav Kook in his home, everyone has a maslul miyuchad. Everyone has their own path. And what you discover on your path, you have a glimpse of something I don't know about. On my path, I have a glimpse of an experience that you don't know. But what we can do is what we're doing now. We can share. So yes, I do have an experience that probably no one else in this room has privy to. But I can't imagine what all of you have privy to, and I would love to know that as we connect and share and invite each other into our lives.
I'm curious, just since you've been in Jerusalem and been with Jerusalem and known the city so intimately on so many different levels, in times of real crisis, and it also sounds like in times of real growth and integrity and reclamation of sort of the spirit of the city. I'm curious sort of what you've seen as you've personally transitioned, if you've seen sort of the same growth and exploration at all reflected in the city.
Yes, indeed. Indeed, it's always changing. And I would just love to share a short story with my parents because it very much relates to my love relationship with Yerushalayim. So, shortly before my mom passed away, which actually the first year anniversary is coming up in a few weeks, actually next week, I'll be back in New York to be by Kever, a gravesite. A few years before, she was suffering from Parkinson's. And on one of my visits, she was resting in the bedroom, and my parents met when they were teenagers. When my mom passed away, they were almost married 66 years.
Wow.
And they were the love of each other's lives. So I asked my dad, I said, Dad, I'm curious. What kept you and Mom going? You're still in love with each other. Even now, she's so sick, and we know what the next few years will probably bring. You love her so much. What's that about? So he said to me, as much as I think I know your mom, I still don't know her. She still surprises me. Even that she's so ill, every once in a while she says something or does something, and I'll say, Joan, what's that all about? Okay. My father went out for a walk or whatever, my mom wakes up, we're in the kitchen together. I didn't tell her I had this discussion with my father. So I said, Mom, I'm really curious. You and Dad, you've been married, about 64 years. At that time, he was about 64. And each one of you, when you walk into the room, you still light up. This is like a love affair that never ends. What's going on? She said, everybody always asks me that. Everyone. Okay, what's the answer? She said, I don't think I'll ever have your father figured out. He keeps surprising me. Sometimes he does something and I'll say, Harold, I've known you for 64 years. I'm married to you, I've known you for more than that. What's that all about? I don't feel I'll ever figure out Yerushalayim. She is always surprising me in this relationship. Sometimes there's disappointment, sometimes there's wow. But we're still together because she hasn't figured me out and I haven't figured her out. And we're so in love with each other.
Have you found a religious community where you can feel comfortable?
I have a lot of religious communities where I feel comfortable. I'm comfortable, for example, at Va'ani Tefillah in Nachlaot with Rav Ross Hartman. I'm comfortable. I've only gone a couple of times in congregation Zion, Yerushalayim. I'm very, very comfortable. I'm going there this Friday night, even though it's a commitment because the walk is a long walk. But I get to sing all the songs on the way home. I'm very comfortable in the egalitarian community and conservative yeshiva where I teach. I'm very comfortable there. I connect to so many of the people there in so many ways. So with being liberated from this occupying force that, you know what it did to me? It kept me, made me smaller and smaller and smaller. I was shrinking away from life. Now I get to expand. And I get to go to Rio de Janeiro and teach Torah for a week with a whole renewal community. I get to go to Crown Heights, Brooklyn and celebrate Shabbat in this Ahavat Yisrael little breakaway, Shlomo type minyan, which I would have never believed would have ever happened when I lived there in the 70s. I get to go to Limud UK where there's an open Orthodox, a regular Orthodox, a meditative Shabbat minyan, a conservative minyan, and I relate to all of them. I get to go to Zurich for a weekend as a scholar in residence and dabble with all their different expressions of how to be in community. And I get to do that all over Yerushalayim and Tel Aviv, and Haifa, and the Golan, and the Galil, and the Arava. Because I'm at home with me. I'm at home with so many different communities.
Is there a position in the Orthodox world about transgender, like there's been some halachic
There actually has, and in accordance with Jewish tradition, not all rabbis agree with it, but a great rabbi, Rav Eliezer, I forget his last name, Waltenheim, he wrote a sefer called the Tzitz Eliezer. He passed away just a few years ago, a Haredi rabbi, born in Yerushalayim, Yerushalmi. He was a dayan on the main Beit Din of Yerushalayim. And he made it his business to study through Shaarei Tzedek a lot of medically related procedures because the Beit Din was being asked she'ilot, questions from Haredim. And the rabbis didn't have the knowledge because they needed to have the secular knowledge in order to answer the questions, not only the Torah knowledge. Well, this woman asked him, post-operative, male to female, like myself, who am I in halacha? And he researched the surgery, the psychological state, and he brought down through sources where he was able to parallel them, where he said, she is a Bat Yisrael according to halacha. So I'm a Bat Yisrael according to halacha, according to the Tzitz Eliezer. And as one woman said to me one day, challenging me, but not everybody will agree with that. I said, okay, tell me something new. That's okay.
Do you know of any other Haredi men that have done?
Not Haredi, but more and more Shomer Mitzvot Rabbanim, and also the conservative movement has just come out with another tshuva. It's happening. It's growing.
Do you know of any other Haredi men who have made your transition?
Oh, I thought you meant rabbis, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah. Yes. And those who I know who haven't made it are getting ready to make it. We just need one more day. One more day. Okay, so,
one more question. Is there some sort of event that triggered your decision to go through the transition? I think you said you read this article, but then you only made the transition 9 years later. Is there some sort of immediate event, encounter, you had a conversation you had or something?
Is there something what?
Event, a conversation, a book you read or something like this and made you take the decision, all right, I'm going through this transition now?
Yes. It's a part A and a part B. When I moved to San Francisco, I don't think I was there more than a week, and I met this guy and fell madly in love. I don't think I've ever loved like that before or since. And after 3 years, he said, I need to have a really important talk with you. You know that talk. And he said, for months I've been angsting over this. Because something was not right in this relationship. I thought everything was perfect. He let me he said he's gay, but he liked men that were more like the woman, which didn't make sense to me, but it didn't have to make sense to me because I'm not him. I just loved the whole connection because he kind of let me to flourish and experiment with my femaleness. He said, "You are not an effeminate gay male. You want to be my wife. You want to be my wife. And I think that's wonderful that you want to be my wife. Just, I don't want a wife. I'm gay. And you know what? I love you enough right now to tell you, do it. Do it. You know you have to do it. I'll always be here as your supporter and friend for life. But I'm not going to be your husband." And of course, that totally, I did exactly what he expected. I said, "Oh no, that's not really true. I don't want to be your wife." I was in total denial. He said, "Stop it. Just stop it. You need to take your life seriously." And about 6 months later, I woke up on my 50th birthday feeling totally alone. Totally alone and disconnected. That was it. I hit my spiritual rock bottom. And he did remain faithful to me as a friend. Actually, I'm going to New York next week after Shavuot, then I'm flying out. Limud, the Bay Area Limud is flying me out. I'm arriving Thursday night. Limud begins Friday. We're having dinner together. Yeah. So we have retained a very, very close friendship. And the first time he saw me after my transition, it was about 4 years, 5 years. I remember he took me out to dinner. I was in Seattle for a couple of years before I returned to Israel. And he knocks on the door, I answer it. And he said, "Oh my gosh, if I was straight, you would be my wife." So that was, again, a lot of darkness, but like my father said, it's always that silver lining. He actually wrote one of the praises to my book. And he felt honored to be able to write that praise. But that day, waking up and feeling so alone and so disconnected, there was nowhere else. I couldn't go down. I couldn't breathe any more air into this occupying force. I had nothing left inside of me. So that was the A and B event. Okay, so on that note, stay tuned. I don't know when it will be, but I believe David and I are going to work on a date and I can give an official reading from my book. And the books will be here for sale and for signing. I don't know when yet, but that'll be coming sometime to a theater near you, right here, Tmol Shilshom. And thank you all, and Mamash Chag Sameach, Yom Yerushalayim Sameach.
תודה רבה.
בשמחה, ממש בכיף.
מדהים.